have hired our offensive coordinator.
We have.
And it's an intriguing hire. I'd say it's a pretty big name. We ended up hiring Ken Dorsey, who, for those of you who don't know, has been in Buffalo for the last forever. Yeah. And he, for the longest time, was a quarterback's coach. Over the past 2 years, while Dable has been with the Giants, he was running the Bills' offense. But, of course, during the middle of this year, ended up getting fired. Joe Brady came in, took over that offense. But, Derek,
Yes.
when it comes to Joe Brady, when it comes to Ken Dorsey, when you look at this hire, what was your initial reaction to figuring out that Ken Dorsey was going to be our offensive coordinator?
Okay, so this is fascinating because there's a couple different things. My initial reaction to your question was kind of sorry, but it was really nothing. Like, I didn't have a strong opinion when I first heard it. I wanted to really do my homework and try to gather the most information I could about him, because obviously, knew him from being in Buffalo, knew him from being fired, and also knew him from being an ex-Cleveland Browns quarterback. So that is interesting. I love that part. I love the idea of bringing a guy who knows Cleveland, has been here back. I loved that with Bubba Ventrone, and I love that aspect of Ken Dorsey. Now, for me, I do have my problems with the Bills' offense, how it was structured. However, my initial thoughts as far as trying to process all this is, hey, the style of quarterback that he had in Buffalo, I feel like affected play calling a bit as far as the passing downfield and being aggressive attacking downfield. So I don't necessarily think he is only that. I think it's just what he had to work with and getting the best out of that. Now, Josh Allen threw a lot of picks, yes, and a lot of people are saying Ken Dorsey was the scapegoat in that whole situation because you're not going to get rid of Josh Allen or blame Josh Allen. You're going to try to fix it because he's the franchise quarterback. So, and I'm not blaming Buffalo. I'm not saying they did the wrong thing, but there's multiple reasons into him being fired. But as far as him with the Browns, it intrigues me because this is the best running back he's had to work with, at least recently. I think the style of quarterback is interesting for him to work with. And I think, we'll talk about it later, but the receiving threats that he has to work with Njoku, with Amari Cooper, and with some of the other guys that are hopefully going to be brought in. A lot of this intrigues me as far as what the structure is going to be. Because Kevin Stefanski is going to want to run the football. Like, that's just what he's going to want to do. We're not going to get away from that. We're not going to get away from a lot of the core things of a Kevin Stefanski offense. That's just what it is. The question becomes, okay, how does Ken Dorsey's pass attack fit into what we're going to want to do here? So I'm going to read you this. This is from the Dogs podcast, who I'm with, so shout out to them. And I'll try to post this on, the edit when you all see this video, so you can read it along with me. But this is talking about Ken Dorsey's coaching history, track record, and just kind of overall success. He was the Carolina Panthers quarterback coach, like you mentioned, from 2013 to 2017. Guided Cam Newton to a 17,154 yard time there with 118 touchdowns over 4 seasons. Cam Newton averaged almost 4,300 yards and 30 touchdowns a season with Ken Dorsey there. It was credited for Cam Newton's 2015 MVP season, Offensive Player of the Year, and Super Bowl appearance. Cam Newton said this about Dorsey after he was hired away from the Panthers to the Bills. So, again, this is from Cam Newton talking about Ken Dorsey. Obviously, he's going to say good things, but it's not like he has to. So I personally take this with a lot of um, importance, if that's the right word. But this is what Cam Newton said. He said, I credit a lot of my success to Ken Dorsey. He is an extremely hard and efficient worker. He has made my life as easy as possible. Key sentence there. Not only is he a hard worker, but he has a vibrant killer instinct. He's a known proven winner over the years. That's what Cam Newton said. So that's his time in Carolina. Now, here's his time in Buffalo. He's quarterback's coach from 2019 to 2020. Josh Allen had a 17.4 increase in quarterback rating, the largest improvement of any quarterback that season. In 2020, second year as quarterback's coach, Josh Allen was second in MVP voting. Allen had a 69.2 completion percentage, 4,544 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, and 8 games with 300-plus passing yards, which is I'm going to ignore that. So then he goes to pass game coordinator in 2021. Josh Allen had a 149 QB rating in the playoffs, most all time for a player with 50-plus attempts in the postseason. So that's passing game coordinator. And then 2022 to 2023, offensive coordinator. So in 2022, Josh Allen had 4,283 yards, 35 touchdowns, 5 games with 300-plus yards, 2 games with 400-plus yards, finished third in MVP voting in 2022, and completion percentage dropped from 71% to 62%. Yards per game dropped from 269 to 233 after Ken Dorsey was fired in 2023. So, I say all that to say the Browns have an interesting situation with Deshaun Watson. And, with Ken Dorsey's help, Cam Newton got an MVP, and Josh Allen finished second and third in MVP voting. So a lot of people will take that information and look at it with a grain of salt, and I'm not saying you're wrong by doing that, but I do think Ken Dorsey has gotten a little bit of a negative mark on him, if that makes sense, for multiple different reasons. And the biggest question is, okay, his time in Buffalo, how much of the issues were Josh Allen throwing picks, and just kind of making brash decision making? So that's the question. And when you bring Ken Dorsey into a system with a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, Tristan, what did I say was my concern with Deshaun Watson and his injury history? I said that I'm concerned that he could be Cam Newton. However, this might work out for the best because you now have a guy that got Cam Newton, it helped him to his MVP, and I think Deshaun Watson plays very similar to Cam Newton. Obviously, it's not apples to apples, but in terms of a hire and kind of looking at it initially, there's a lot to be seen here. And there's a lot of questions that I have, Tristan. But today, as we sit here, whatever day it is today,
January 30th. Yeah.
January 30th, I have a lot of optimism about this. I have a lot of optimism because I think Deshaun Watson's skill set, Ken Dorsey knows. And I think that, again, the pass game needs a major upgrade. And I think he can bring that. Now, the question becomes, how can the run game and how can the pass game do this and combine and figure it out? That's the question. And second part, I know I'm rambling, I'm sorry. Play calling. Kevin Stefanski, Ken Dorsey. What is their relationship going to be? Because the three of Ken Dorsey, Kevin Stefanski, and then Tommy Rees are going to be the biggest three heads in this offense. How is their relationships going to be? How is that going to work out? How much on the same page are they going to be? So, Tristan, it's interesting. It's very interesting. And I'm fascinated by the hire. Do I think there were better options out there? Are there guys that I would have rather had? Sure. But in terms of track record and the good things that you look at, I think there's a lot of really good signs. And I think it could, given everything working out, um, be a huge, huge positive for the Browns for next year. So, with that being said, Tristan, your turn, buddy. What do you think about Ken Dorsey being hired?
Yeah, so my let's get into my initial reaction. So my initial reaction, I'll be honest, I was underwhelmed at first. I thought to myself, are you kidding me? We're hiring the guy who got fired midseason by the Bills and their offense got better. You know, like that was my initial reaction, but I was not really educated in, you know, like what do they say? Like, I didn't know your game was like that or whatever. I can't remember the Shaq quote. I misunderstood your game. I think it was what he said. Like, I
I
didn't
wasn't
understand.
aware of your game.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't aware of your game, you know. So like, geez, I sounded like a boomer there, not gonna lie. But regardless, kids these days. No. Regardless, I
Shut
think
up.
that regardless, I think that this, right, when you look at what was the biggest concern, what was the biggest issue with this offense when Deshaun Watson was in? We weren't able to pass the football effectively. We were not. We were not getting the most out of him, and we struggled. We struggled with it really, really bad. Um, I think that these coaching hires that we've made have been very, very intentional, very thorough, very
Hmm.
thoughtful, and I'm really intrigued by what this offense is going to look like. I'm with you. What I will say is this: I disagree with one thing that you said out of everything you did say. Your quarterback is being paid $240 million. I get Kevin Stefanski wants to run the football. Your quarterback is the centerpiece of your offense this year, hands down. That's what these moves say to me. It says to me, our passing game hasn't been good enough, and it's going to be a main focus of this team.
Hmm.
And when Deshaun Watson was in, we were throwing the football a lot. Like,
Hmm.
people were upset that we weren't running the football more. Now, we lose Nick Chubb,
Yep.
and we have injuries on the offensive line. That stuff kind of went away. People were more okay with us throwing the football as much as we did. But I got to be blunt here. We're not going to win a Super Bowl by being a good run team. You saw the Ravens try to do that, and they didn't. Although, to be fair, they banded the run really early in that game. But we'll talk about it later.
Hmm.
Um, at the end of the day, if you're gonna win the AFC, it still goes through Kansas City, and it still goes through number 15.
Hmm.
And you got to have a guy that is good enough to stay with him, and the rest of your team can beat the rest of their team.
Yep.
That is the number one way you're going to get past that team. I don't care how bad of a regular season they have. I don't care. They've got Andy Reid. They've got Pat Mahomes. They're going to figure it out. Hell, even if they lose Travis Kelsey, if he retires this offseason, like, are we not like, 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 imagine if they like traded up for Brock Bowers, right? Like, that would be a nightmare. Like, oh great, you move off of Travis Kelsey and you get another generational tight end. Like,
Hmm.
the only thing would be worse if they traded for Kyle Pitts. All the
Oh my
fantasy owners
gosh.
everywhere would be very happy. No, but I just think that when I look at this team, and I look at what we needed the most from last year, I'm confident that when Nick Chubb is in there and when our offensive line is healthy, especially when if we retain Bill Callahan, which I haven't heard any movement of him like moving out, so that makes me optimistic. I trust that our run game next year is going to be fine. I trust it, right?
Hmm.
Even if we've got a new running backs coach, and even if we're changing up how we run the football, I expect it to be a good running attack. Number one question has always been the pass. And what I will say is this: Ken Dorsey. So Jason Lloyd on the UCSS Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Great show, check it out. A lot of really cool guys on there. G. Bush. He's
Mm-hmm.
a friend of yours in particular. Love him. Love a lot of the guys on there. But Jason Lloyd was talking about how he had talked to one of his buddies in Buffalo that knew the situation in Buffalo. Somebody that knew the situation, I should say. And they said that when Brian Dable got hired away to the Giants, Josh Allen, they gave Josh Allen a lot of say in who he thought should be the OC. And he handpicked Ken Dorsey. And he loved what Ken Dorsey could do for him. And let's not forget, you know, this last year wasn't his first year running the offense. The year before, when he was running this offense, it was very efficient. It was very, very good. And honestly, like, they didn't miss a beat, really, losing Brian Dable. I thought that they were still a very good offense. The issue this year, when you look at it, is turnovers. They turned the ball over way too much. They were terrible with the turnovers, and it lost them football games. And not only that, but I don't think Sean McDermott gets enough heat for this. Their defense was not what it had been. Between those two things, I'll say that. I mean, that performance that defense had against the Chiefs was abysmal. I mean, abysmal. But yeah, we'll get into that. Actually, no, we won't get into that. We already got into it previously. But regardless, I look at this hire and I say it makes so much sense. Like, it's so refreshing to be a Browns fan and, you know, after doing my research, saying like, oh, I get it. Like, I get it. I get why we drafted this guy. I get why we decided for this coach. I get why we moved on. Like, it's so refreshing to be like, you know, oh, I see the direction these guys are going in, rather than what are we doing? Like, there's no identity. We have an identity now. And I have so much faith in this coach, in this pass game for next year, because regardless of who's calling the plays, right? Whether it be Kevin or Ken, don't really care. I'll be brutally honest. I don't care. I think that Kevin should be the play caller. And there's a reason why, and I'll explain that. Actually, I'll explain it now. I will say, in my opinion, the only shortcoming that I think that Ken Dorsey has had in his career has been his calling of the run game. I think that's something he needs to improve with. And if he does improve in that, in his knowledge of that, I think that it could be, he could be a very good head coach potentially one day, you know? We'll see. There's still time for him. But I look at what, so listen, if Ken Dorsey is not going to be the guy to call plays, what will his impact be? This guy, between him, Kevin Stefanski, and Tommy Reese, and can't remember the name of our receivers coach right now.
Chad O'Shea.
Chad O'Shea. Yeah, he's still here.
Unfortunate.
Listen, that guy's gotten OC jobs before, so you know he's a respected play caller in the league. So I will say that. I think between those four, especially the first three that I named, I think you're gonna get a lot of just unique, different pass plays. I think that the playbook itself this offseason changes a lot. Like, I could see it where these guys spend like 40 hours a week coming up with a new playbook, like the whole offseason, and learning how they're going to teach it and such and such. Well, like, I think we are going through a complete reconstruction of the playbook on offense. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to throw in real fast. We'll talk about it later, obviously. But Deshaun Watson, the popular video going around talking about T. Higgins, what does he say? You got to read between the lines. He says, we want to throw more.
Yeah.
Do you think he's just saying that? Like,
No.
Do you think Deshaun's just like, oh, I want to throw more?
The
like,
actions of this organization have proven that.
Yep.
And I would even go as far as to say you don't get a guy in like Tommy Reese, whose offenses as an OC at Alabama have been so built around, or I guess I should say, have featured premium performances from the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't bring him in as just your tight ends coach just to say, oh yeah, I just want you to like teach what we want you to teach. No, he's gonna have input in this pass game, and I think he should. I think he should. He's got a very good knowledge for how to make a tight end effective. And when you look at David Njoku and what he did in the second half of this year, he proved that, man, get the ball in his hands in space and let him move downfield, and he's a receiver. He's
Mm-hmm.
a heavy, fast receiver, and he can block. He can block really well. And I think that David, and this might be a bit premature, but barring injury, I think David could have 1,000-yard receiving season next year. I think
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to make him a feature point in this offense. I think this offense is going to be, I don't want to say pass heavy, but it's going to be passing to set up the run game rather than vice versa. Um, I have a lot of faith in this hire, in these hires, I should say. Um, and Ken Dorsey himself, you know, where he is kind of had his bread and butter with Josh Allen has been creating deep shots for him, making making big throws, explosive plays. Like that was something that this team really lacked before Flacco kind of came along, and eventually linked up with Cooper and Njoku. Like we really lacked explosive plays, and with Deshaun Watson, I think we've got a guy who um, has a more modern way of being able to find and create explosiveness. So I really like this hire, man. I really, really do. And again, the playbook is going to change a lot, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to see how Deshaun is incorporated. And like you, I'm excited to see how we work together the run and pass game, because it feels like right now, the reason why I say Kevin probably should be the OC is because I think I think he's going to rely on these new guys that came in to kind of help him with constructing a playbook that works really well
Mm-hmm.
and in a way that they can teach it really well. And I think that makes a lot of sense to have those guys have input in the pass game. And with Deuce Staley, he's going to have a lot of input in the run game too. I think that between those guys, the playbook is going to be completely changed. And Kevin is going to have a whole new arsenal to work with. And for people that might be scared of that thought, like this is going to be something outside of Kevin's like knowledge, whole new thing to him. Is he going to be an effective play caller with this system? What I will say is this: there's a certain amount of scripted plays that we're going to have at the start of every game, and better believe that every single guy that we just hired is going to have some,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say at least some say, if not a lot of say, in what plays get in the script. And I think that it might have some road bumps, but I'm excited for it. I think that this team is selling out to really make an effort to become a more modernized NFL offense that fits with your quarterback. I'm excited to see it. I'm really excited. And the other thing that Jason Lloyd mentioned on the UCSS was part of the issues with Josh Allen were that from upstairs, from higher than coaching, there was a message put through that Josh Allen needs to stop running the football. That he needs to stop because they paid him a lot of money and they don't want to see him get hurt. And that may or may not have influenced a lot of the turnovers, because he also said that after Ken Dorsey got fired, that they started to kind of loosen the chain with Josh with running the football, and you
Mm-hmm.
saw it. Like he played more free and he looked better and he turned the ball over less. Um, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, is this a Ken Dorsey revenge season? Like, man, like I feel like this team is going to spend big at receiver, and I think we're going to talk about this today. So, get excited. Uh, but we're going to talk about this today. But I think this team is going to spend big at receiver. We're going to be a completely revitalized pass team. And I wonder if I should save this for like a hot takes part of the offseason. But I'll just say it now. And I'll bring it up then as well. This team could be a top 5 pass team in the NFL. They can. They've got the players to do it. And when you've got a guy like Nick Chubb in your backfield too, it means that teams can't just sell out for the pass either, if we can find that success there, which I think we will. I'm excited for free agency to hit, man. I'm really excited. But any final thoughts? Because I could probably go for another hour talking about the like butterflies in my tummy, talking about how excited I am for this new offense. But I do want to wrap it up because I could go for hours. So Derek, any final thoughts before we kind of move on to our next topic?
Nothing other than just reiterating the point of they're going to have to find a balance. How they go about finding that balance will be interesting. And I agree with you. Honestly, I would rather Kevin call plays, but I'm not going to be upset if Ken Dorsey does. I think a lot of it just comes down to Deshaun. You know, what's his comfort level with everything and where's he at? That's a huge part. But for sure, I think Kevin's weakness has not been necessarily getting guys open in the pass game. I think it's just the structure of the offense, man. It has been condensed, it has been limited, and it needs to burst open. Like, we need to, I mentioned it before, we need to move from the Kyle Shanahan-esque offenses of early, and we need to move it over, and we need to get with the program here, because if you don't, you're going to fall behind. And that's the biggest thing with this hire is it's a passing league, you know, and yeah, I love Nick Chubb, but I don't know that we are at the point now where we can solely rely on him. And I feel like there needs to be more of the emphasis in the pass game. So who calls plays? I don't know. But you best believe those three, including Deshaun Watson, will sit down. They will discuss it. They will talk about it. And they will come up with something. And once you get the structure of what you want to do, then you can go in and you can add the pieces. And you can say, okay, we know what we have to work with financially and trade and draft assets. We know what we have there to add to this. But step one is getting it down. And you best believe that's what they're working on right now. That's what they're going to figure out. And once they do, it will be fun because you're going to have the Kevin Stefanski aspects of the run game and even in the pass game. But I think it's going to be more wide open and it's going to be more spread out. So, yeah, I mean, we can move on. That's about all I had on it. It's interesting.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say, and then I'll transition. I think it speaks volumes when, you know, like you said, with that Cam Newton quote, that Ken made his life a lot easier, and he loved him. And Josh Allen also handpicking him. Two guys that are elite quarterbacks. Cam Newton obviously had his sharp downfall, but still, he played at an elite level. He, you know, two guys that were in that position that clearly both loved him, realized what value that he brought. Man, I can't help but think that this hire is going to be very influential in a very positive way. But again,